welcome back to my channel. I'm Sarah and I am a new mum to a baby girl called Sophia. In today's story time, I'm talking about my breastfeeding journey and how I went from breast to bottle. During my pregnancy, I assumed that I would breastfeed when I gave birth, so I did everything I could to prepare for that. I went to all the baby classes, including a 3-hour-long class at the hospital. I had a pump because I thought, well, I might want to pump and I might want to express a little bit, you know, to make it easier. We had a couple of bottles, but we didn't really think we'd need any equipment because we just assumed it's going to be easy, it's natural, right? Everyone can breastfeed. No, not everybody can breastfeed. Let's go to just after giving birth, and the baby did the crawling thing and latched on, and it was great. I thought, done it. First time, done it. If you've seen my birth story video, I'll link that in the description box below. You'll know that I felt like I left hospital too soon. Breastfeeding was one of the reasons why I felt we left too soon. I didn't feel like I knew what I was doing enough. We got home and the first few days, baby was feeding on me all the time. And when I mean all the time, she fed for over an hour at a time, each time. She'd then have a 5-minute break and want to feed again. And this massively fed into my postnatal depression, which I talked about last week's video. I'll also link that below. She just didn't stop feeding, constantly on. Again, I was told this was normal and that she was just getting the milk in and she was trying to get the colostrum, and it didn't feel normal. It felt like I wasn't getting a break. I became sore and cracked quickly and it was just so painful. They say that the first few seconds or however many seconds of breastfeeding is painful and then it should ease up and it should feel right. It didn't feel like that. It was horrific. It felt so painful, and I had people coming around to help me. I had people who had breastfed before in my family and also midwives helping me. I was really determined. I wasn't getting any sleep. Like I said, she was feeding all the time, all night, all day. I didn't get a break at all. It was really exhausting. If you've been there, you'll know. Day 5 came and I'd had a different midwife that I'd not seen before, and I just was crying and crying because at this point I was terrified of Sophia, absolutely terrified. I didn't want her anywhere near me because I just thought she was going to want to feed anytime she was near me, and I was desperate for that not to happen because it was so painful, and I was suffering with recovering from my episiotomy as well at the same time. So I had this pain, that pain, emotional pain. I was in a lot of pain, and the breastfeeding just made me feel miserable. And this midwife came and she was fantastic, and she basically looked me in the eye and said, "Do you want me to give you permission to stop?" And I said, "Yes, please." It was such a turmoil. It was such a turmoil in my mind. I was having a real back and forth argument with myself because I desperately wanted to breastfeed, but I was hating it. And I just knew that Sophia wasn't getting anything. And the fact she gave me permission was fantastic because it meant that it was okay if I wanted to try something different. So we came up with a plan. Well, the midwife decided we should have 24 hours break and purely bottle feed. So Joe rushed out to get formula, and hello Rosie. She's been a poorly girl today, so giving her a bit of love. You're gonna tell the story with me. We were gonna do 24 hours of purely bottle feeding her. So fast forward to 48 hours later, I gave myself 48 hours break. I was pumping in between because I decided that I was going to start again on Monday, so I was making sure that I was still pumping and still expressing. And we kind of thought, well, maybe we'll feed her a bottle at night so that she sleeps longer and then breastfeed in the day. Monday came and I decided to phone the hospital to get the breastfeeding support again. So in I went and I got the support, left feeling much better. Yep, I've got the latch. And I think it was that day we actually went out for the first time and I had to breastfeed in public. And that whole week I went into the hospital every day trying to get breastfeeding support. but it didn't work. They kept saying my latch was fine and it looked great. She was A, feeding for an incredibly long time still. She was feeding for well over an hour each time, and she'd lost weight as well. And B, it was still really painful, like toe-curling painful. I was pumping blood, put it that way. That's how bad it was. I had the cream, I was doing everything you're supposed to do to help it. And I just felt really miserable. I hated it, I absolutely hated it, but I didn't want to admit that because you're not supposed to, and you're supposed to push through the pain. And I just thought, I actually don't think I can push through anymore. It got to the Thursday, day 11, and Joe came in the room. I was in bits again. I wasn't sleeping, remember, at this point. And he said, enough is enough now. We're stopping, we're going full-time formula. And that's when it felt like a sigh of relief. I couldn't do it anymore. I think because I had a traumatic birth, I was in pain from recovering, I was really depressed, very sleep deprived, and I wasn't enjoying breastfeeding at all. I didn't get that happiness that people get from it. Is it oxytocin, I think people are supposed to get from breastfeeding? And that bond, I wasn't bonding with her at all. I didn't want her anywhere near me. It was doing everything opposite for me, and I thought there was something wrong at first. It was a really, really tough time. I find breastfeeding a really emotional topic for me. As I previously said, I really wanted to breastfeed. It was something I dreamed of, it was something I thought I could do, and it was something I thought I would love. And I couldn't do it, I didn't love it, and it was turning into a nightmare. When we started formula feeding, I still felt really sad and I was still conflicted about it all. However, Sophia was like a new baby. She was calm, settled. She wasn't smiling at this point because she was too young, but I got the sense that if she could smile, she would have smiled a lot. She was just really chilled out, and she started sleeping really well. She was sleeping a good 4-hour chunk at night, then a feed, and then a good 4-hour chunk, which for 11 days old, from that point was amazing. I still had a lot of issues with it though, and I had to talk through with various professionals to help myself. And actually, in my CBT, we did a survey to random women asking about breastfeeding because I was paranoid that people were judging me and thinking that I was a terrible mother for bottle feeding such a young baby. Of course, they weren't even noticing it. So we did this survey and the comments really shocked me. One of the questions was something along the lines of, if you saw a mum bottle feeding a baby, what would you think? And a lot of them thought, oh, how lovely, a mum feeding and bonding with her baby. When I thought back, I thought, yeah, I've never really noticed a mum bottle feeding, and I've never thought, why is she bottle feeding her? So why would other people think that about me? It really doesn't matter. And I spoke to a lot of people, a lot of friends, a lot of people online who had been in a similar situation to me where they couldn't breastfeed and they had to bottle feed. And I started to bond with Sophia a lot more once I bottle fed her. I could hold her really close to me, she could look at me, I didn't have that fear. If I was upstairs having a bath and she started crying, Joe could feed her. She wasn't totally dependent on me anymore. It meant that I could focus a little bit more, a lot more, on getting myself better mentally, which meant I became a better mother for her. And that's what a lot of the professionals said. And at that point as well, on day 11, when I made that decision, I felt like I really had done everything. Nothing seemed to work. It just wasn't a fit for us. It was the right decision for her. And if I'm honest, it would have been selfish for me as a mum to carry on breastfeeding her, because it would have been for my own desires, not for her benefit. This is where my issue with the phrase breast is best comes in, because breast wasn't best for us and it's not best for every mum. And you know what, I've spoken to people who never intended to breastfeed and always chose to bottle feed, and that's absolutely fine as well. It's everybody's choice on how they feed their baby. It's up to nobody else, and we should not be judged by anybody. I mean, if you can do it, credit to you. But if you don't want to do it, credit to you as well for making that choice and for knowing what's best. Everybody has their own story, everybody has their own reasons, whether it's a choice or not. Who cares? Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you've got your own feeding story to share about your baby, then leave it in the comments below. Let's get a discussion going about this. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next week.